Hello everyone, my name is James and this is Real Biased Gaming. In this video I'm covering all the champion changes in League of Legends patch 3.9. I'll attempt to simplify what the changes actually do and mostly give my opinion on whether this change is good for the champion and good for the game as well. Now before I jump in, I want to comment on this patch as a whole from Riot. This was a very passive patch, I felt. Very few champions were changed, nearly none were major at all, just mainly the Leblanc and Shyvana changes. Also, Riot has chosen to ignore many champions who are underpowered or still really overpowered, which I found kind of odd. Champions like Zac and Elise, people who are really dominating solo queue. We switched to a single patch every month to get more done in those patches and really to get to see what is working and what isn't over the course of a whole month instead of every 2 weeks. And yet we get this kind of somewhat boring, simple patch. Now, no, I do not think this is reflective on the fact that champions in League of Legends are so much more evenly balanced. I really don't think it's that. I have a few other theories on why this patch is a little thin, but overall, I guess I just found it kind of odd, so I wanted to say that. Alright, enough of my soapbox. First change here is for Brand. Mana reductions for Pillar of Flame, and a big one for Pyroclasm, which is his ult. Also, Conflagration had a slight increase in mana cost. Early game, this change is almost unseen, but what it does is encourage the use of the right spells by Brand. Pillar of Flame is spammed more, and it's kind of his bread and butter, so they decreased its cost to kind of encourage that. And for his ult, it's really become a trend to kind of bring mana costs down for a lot of mages' ults, so it's actually kind of cool bringing that down from 200 to just the 100. There's no reason for champions to have 300 mana ults, really, 200-300 mana ults, which they used to have, so that's pretty good. Now, Corki, his mana cost for Valkyrie was actually halved, and his ult took a big reduction in cost as well. The change to Valkyrie by itself may have been enough to play a lot more of Corki, but with his ult half again as spammable at rank 1, yeah, I would not be surprised to see lots and lots of blue build Corkis, Muramana Corkis running around. Now, Draven has been nerfed pretty good with this one, but I think it actually brings him in line with most other AD carries. At first, I thought this was an actual buff, really, because his passive is really, really cool, but the damage off his old passive was so powerful, and now that that's been taken away, it balances out very well. Maybe, and actually, mostly in the direction of a nerf. I like this change because the passive, it just wasn't fun, it wasn't interesting. At least with Darius you get to see the bleed stacks on your opponent, but with Draven the animation was not very cool at all. Obviously this is also not fun for Draven's opponents either, because they have a harder time telling how much damage they're about to take when this invisible dot is ticking on them. Still, he loses quite a bit of damage from that old passive. Now the new passive is actually kind of scary in its own right, because it actually gives you a whole bunch of extra gold on enemy champion kills. So let's just say Draven gets a kill after getting 30 CS in lane. It's only an extra 45 gold when he kills an enemy champion, but it also stacks when he catches his axes, which you can assume he did for all 30 of those CS, right? And if the player was good, of course. And that would also include harass as well, harassing the enemy AD carry and support player. That's going to be an extra 90 gold on a champion kill. Now, that's pretty impressive considering, usually a kill, the first time an enemy champion's kill is like 300 gold, so that's another 33% more gold off that kill for an extra 90 gold. Draven's going to be a much bigger snowball champion now, maybe the most snowball of all the AD carries in the game right now, which is pretty cool. It definitely kind of gives him a different feel, but again, I'm wondering if that damage that he took off him is really going to have him lose his spot right now in the AD carry, the top AD carry role in solo queue. Now moving on to Jayce, this change for Jayce is one that seems a little passive, kind of as I mentioned before. They buffed the Shock Blast without the acceleration gate, which makes sense. It was kind of wimpy on its own. And then they bumped up the cooldown on acceleration gate. Now let's think about it this way. Let's say you have a Jayce who has like 40% CDR, so that would be a cooldown item and blue buff. So his gate is going to come up every 9 seconds now, instead of 6 before. The Shock Blast plus Acceleration Gate was broken before, and they nerfed it for sure, but it still is ridiculously powerful. Basically no counterplay. It's a step in the right direction, but I feel this change was just a little soft-handed, more soft-handed than it needed to be. Now, Kennen got a good base damage nerf, as well as getting his marks nerfed down. Now, I actually thought the marks have stayed on their target for too long, for quite some time now, and I don't think it really hurts Kennen too much. It just makes playing against him a little more fair, really. Now, the nerf to his base attack damage is interesting, but for some time now, Riot has been trying to make it easier for people to itemize and rune better towards specific champions, and going against a Kennen while you get a bunch of extra MR, it can be frustrating when his auto attacks do quite a bit of damage as well. You know, it's almost as much as most AD carries base damage. Now, really just a quality of life improvement for Kennen's lane opponents. Both changes, really. They just kind of help out the person who's playing against Kennen, which of course isn't necessarily good for Kennen, but I think overall it makes sense. Now, for Leblanc, I literally spent a half hour reading over the changes and doing the numbers. Here are the basics of what you need to know. Here's the most important stuff that I found out. Sigil of Silence, her Q, now deals more damage if you get the mark off. So if you hit the target with another spell after the initial Sigil of Silence hits. However, a one-time use with no follow-up does about 30% less damage than before, alright? So just harassing with a single Q, 30% less damage, it's going to be a lot less scary. Now, Distortion is a little more expensive at later levels, and then Ethereal Chains now stuns the target 25% sooner than before, so you don't have to run after them with the chain still attached for a full 2 seconds. It's only 1.5 seconds, which is really helpful for LeBlanc players getting that extra tick on the damage in. Now, Mimic is now free at rank 1, and all ranks then, and instead of giving percentage increases to LeBlanc's other abilities, it actually gives them flat damage numbers. The thing to know here is that it really pays to mimic Distortion, as it basically has a 1-to-1 ratio for LeBlanc's ability power, which is really epic, and you rarely see that. At earlier levels, LeBlanc players will probably want to distort the ability that they have not ranked up, which is interesting. So you rank up, you Q first, and then maybe you you mimic your Distortion, which you haven't ranked up at this point, because then it actually deals a whole lot more damage because the mimic has those base numbers now. So I went over some of the numbers. So here's one number scenario. This is actually for late game. What should we talk about? They wanted LeBlanc to be better mid game and late game. So at level 18 and with 400 ability power, so all abilities ranked all the way up. So with LeBlanc, you Sigil and then Distortion, and then you mimic Distortion. And then, of course, use Distortion again to return to the original spot. Doing that whole combo deals 1,955 base damage, not including magic resist and everything like that. And that's without using your Ethereal Chains. Before, with 400 ability power and a level 18, LeBlanc would have dealt 1,854 damage. And as you get more ability power, those numbers get farther and farther apart. But as you can see, it's about a difference of about 100 damage right there. About roughly 5-6% more damage now late game because of the better ratios and things. LeBlanc is a tricky champ, and those changes really live up to her difficulty level and playstyle. Overall, she got a lot stronger really in the mid-game because of the more forgiving flat damage numbers on her Mimic spell and some of the other spells as well, which that really should carry her better into late game where, as I just showed with the numbers, she also does a lot more damage. Now going on to Nunu, if there's one change that is kind of a joke in this patch, it's this one for Nunu. Health per level reduced by 12. The extra health he gets from consuming a golem is already ridiculously high, and it more than compensates for the overall 216 health that he doesn't get anymore at level 18. Seriously, that extra health that he's going to get from the golem, it's still a ton. I mean, he was already tanky before. He just builds his jungle items. He's going to be easily as tanky as any other jungler, but he has his extra buffs. He has the crazy, kill on Dragon or Baron with a flat 2,000 damage from Consume and from Smite. And then speaking of Consume, actually reducing the Consume damage, it's not really that scary, and it doesn't even accomplish what Riot wanted. They said that they didn't want people to be able to out-smite somebody just using their Consume, and yet Consume still does more damage than Smite, even with this nerf. Now, to be fair, Consume only does 10 more damage at level 1 than Smite does, but the fact is that it does more damage. Also, the ridiculous 990 damage combo of Smite and Consume level 1 still means it's easy for Nunu to run over and steal that blue buff, that level 1 to any minion in the game. 990 damage with Smite Consume. And, you know, that just leaves the enemy jungler solidly behind because he didn't get his buff, and Nunu gets to run around with his consume back up with a 17-second cooldown at level 1. So Nunu is still ridiculously powerful. He's still going to dominate the solo queue, and he's still going to be banned out all the time. It's just interesting that they, again, really soft-handed here with this nerf. Alright, now for Shyvana, again, it's kind of a wall of text. I did some number crunching here, so let me explain what happened. First off, Flame Breath was kind of nerfed. Dealing a percentage of the max health of the target on every attack is definitely nice, and it's going to help her as a tank to deal some damage, but the 15% armor shred was the best part of that ability, so, you know, rest in peace, Flame Breath. I mean, it was always ranked up last anyways, but it was really nice getting that flat 15% armor shred. Now, her ultimate was actually buffed like crazy. Here's what I got. So, don't worry about the numbers in the patch. You know, this is what is important. Before, if Shyvana didn't auto-attack at all, her ult would wear off in 18 seconds. Now, without auto-attacking, it wears off in 33 seconds. That is a long freaking time, and that is still increased by how many times she auto-attacks anything. Basically, as a bruiser or a tank, having a free 40 armor and 40 magic resist for a minimum of 33 seconds whenever she ults is incredibly powerful. Plus, the percentage damage is going to help her do something, you know, even while she's a tank and while she's tanky and running around, she's still going to be dealing that percentage damage, which is pretty nice for her late game. So I definitely like that change. Overall, Shyvana got a lot stronger. I mean, final verdict. I think she still has no CC, which is definitely her one blemish, but she's a really strong all-around champion right now. Really tough to kill, and really powerful, you know, initiation with her ultimate flying into the enemy team and all that. Alright, the last champion change here is on ZIggs. His satchel charge got a slight buff. It lands faster and pushes enemies farther. Pretty straightforward, really. It's just another quality of life improvement for him, for, you know, really one of the lesser played champions, which is interesting. Alright, well that's all I got. That is all the major champion changes. I mean, there were a bunch of bug fixes and everything, but these are the big champion changes that you're going to be seeing on the fields of justice going forward with patch 3.9 for League of Legends. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and stick around for more gaming and League of Legends content. Once again, my name is James, and this is Real Biased Gaming.